If there was ever a case, and there's an important if in this sentence note, that President Trump is a master deal maker whose outrageous opening demands are just a device to change what's possible, you could say that it's Gaza. When Trump, flanked by Benjamin Netanyahu, came up with his extraordinary proposal for a Gaza Riviera, from which the Palestinians would all be removed and America would own, there was a strong argument to be made that this was just so distasteful it could only be designed to be pushing the Arab states to come up with their own alternative plan. Well, that recently happened, and yet we still seem to be spiralling into another explosion that will see the resumption of violence and misery. So let's have a look at this. Things have somewhat normalised in Gaza since the first phase of the ceasefire began. Normalised as much as anything can be normalised in a total bomb site. The first phase of the ceasefire has ended, of course. We're supposed to move to a second phase, where more hostages would be released, Israeli forces would exit Gaza. Israel, however, doesn't want to move on to that phase, so it's negotiating to extend the first phase. In the last few days, it has halted humanitarian aid into Gaza. Last weekend, it cut electricity into the area, which affects a number of things, but most notably the desalination plant that provides a lot of the drinking water. This breaks the original deal, for which President Trump had taken credit, but to all appearances, Netanyahu doesn't much care about that. On the one hand, the extremists in his own coalition are hungry for a return to full siege, to finish the job of wiping out Hamas, if such a thing is even possible. On the other hand, he is emboldened by Trump's plan. It may well have been a negotiation starter, but the essential element of emptying Gaza permanently of Palestinians is the part that's now treasured as the goal that can suddenly be spoken out loud. Now, as I discussed here at the time, Trump's plan was always going to struggle to become a reality, since it relied on Jordan and Egypt voluntarily absorbing the entire population of Gaza, all 2 million of them. In slightly different ways, this would be an existential mistake for the governments of each, and so no amount of Trump bullying or cajoling was likely to overcome that. So it was that Egypt has led with its own plan, a 91-page glossy document with images of leafy neighbourhoods and the like, but the plan's not primarily about property development, as per the Trump plan. It's about a stable political future and the rights of Gazan citizens. Ah, rights! Remember those? A quaint throwback, you might think, to before the sudden changing of a world order to one that officially doesn't really care much about such things. But that world order hasn't given up the ghost, and so we get this deal, the Egypt plan, recently approved by Arab leaders at an emergency summit, so it has become the Arab plan. European leaders have lined up to endorse and welcome the Arab plan. So what's in the plan? It has Gaza run temporarily while reconstruction takes place by a Gaza Management Committee made up of qualified technocrats. That committee to be under the umbrella of the Palestinian government. The UN Security Council would be called upon to deploy international peacekeepers in the area. Once reconstruction is completed, governance would be handed over to the Palestinian Authority, and a major international conference will be held next month to raise the huge sums of money that will be needed for the reconstruction. The plan is based, it is said, on the lessons learned from other ravaged cities that were restored, such as Hiroshima and Beirut and Berlin. The designs are influenced by Egypt's experience of work on its own New Cairo mega project. And it does seem that some of the wealthy Gulf states, keen not to see the Trump Riviera / ethnic cleansing plan to take place, they are prepared to stump up significant amounts of money for it. They won't, of course, invest any of it until it's totally clear that Israeli bombs aren't going to suddenly start raining down all over again. Now, the plan glosses over the role of Hamas, probably reflecting a disagreement between Arab nations as to what it should be. Hamas has reportedly accepted that it will not play a role in running Gaza, which is not a big deal. They showed very little interest in actually governing it when they were in control. A lot of the resource that should have gone into the people of Gaza went instead to building a vast network of tunnels in preparation for war with Israel. But Hamas has, again, reportedly said that the idea of it disarming crosses a line that they don't want to cross. And right there, you have the fatal flaw in the Arab plan. Israel will simply not accept the idea of an active and armed Hamas remaining in Gaza, whether it's in government or not. And it's hard not to take the point, because they would clearly be continuing to divert resources to their end wherever they could, and rebuilding their positions on the basis of returning onto the offence in the future. With the Trump version, the bit that people hate the most, the evacuation of the entire population, enables them to likely root out many of the remaining Hamas fighters, certainly to completely demolish all remaining traces of Hamas underground infrastructure so that the rebuilding is completely afresh. The Arab plan leaves the Palestinians relocated internally while work is ongoing, making it practically impossible to achieve all of the same goals. Is there room for negotiation on that? Well, maybe, but in the short term, what we have instead is the appearance of a resumption of a downward spiral. Israel and the US have rejected the Arab plan. So did Iran, just incidentally. Israel won't accept any presence remaining for Hamas, and refuses likewise to accept a role in government for the Palestinian Authority. Trump has said that he won't force his ideas on anyone, which is nice of him, while still arguing that his plan would work and the current Arab one wouldn't. Meanwhile, the Trump administration shocked Israel by directly talking to Hamas via Trump's hostage envoy Adam Berler. Berler had said in an interview that he had discussed a Hamas proposal that would see all hostages freed in exchange for all remaining Hamas prisoners in Israel. A 5 to 10 year truce with Israel, during which Hamas would disarm and step away from political power in Gaza. He described the proposal as not a bad first offer. Well, cue furious outrage on the Israeli side and an apparent backtracking from the Trump team. Marco Rubio told reporters that was a one-off situation in which our special envoy for hostages, whose job it is to get people released, had an opportunity to talk directly to someone who has control over these people and was given permission and encouraged to do so. But he then added this: as of now, it hasn't borne fruit. According to Axios, Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer told the Security Cabinet that Berler's actions did not represent the White House position and that the Trump team had promised it wouldn't happen again. The US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has now stated that any deals depend on Hamas not only demilitarizing but also leaving Gaza. This was in addition to President Trump himself a few days ago posting on social media that Hamas had to release all the hostages immediately or else there would be hell to pay. He said he was sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. A line that must surely have gotten a rueful smile from every Ukrainian right now. But I digress. Hamas brushed off the threats. After all, Trump had previously promised hell was going to break out if all the hostages weren't released by February the 15th, nearly a month ago. But Hamas must be fully aware of how much Trump's position has empowered Netanyahu. A Hamas official said that Trump should be directing his threats at those refusing to implement the original agreement, not those committed to it. Hamas then released another statement saying that any renewal of aggression against it would see more hostages killed. So here we are. We have a Trump plan that seems impossible to deliver because the Arab nations are not prepared to embrace the Trumpian world where ethnic cleansing of a people from their country is accepted as something you do in order to create a seaside resort. We have an Arab plan that seems impossible to deliver because it fails on the basic preconditions you would actually need to assure investors that their money was safe in the reconstruction of the area. And you have tense negotiations in the short term between Hamas and Israel, with all the incentives lining up behind those who believe that more death and mayhem will improve their likelihood of achieving more of their goals. Doesn't stack up so great for the illusion of Trump, the master negotiator, but we'll see. Maybe there's another rabbit come out of his hat yet. All in all, though, it really is not looking great for civilians in that geographical area.